Dennis, is Billy not going to be here?
I'm here.
Oh. Dennis is there.
Yes.
7 o'clock. Good.
I'm going to call the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. First item is, do I have a first and a second to approve the April 12th, 2022 Planning Commission minutes?
So moved.
I got Deb.
I'll second.
Rob. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, 6-0.
Okay, we'll move on to staff report.
Sorry, I sit here long enough. I forgot to get the speaker or the microphone ready. We are making progress on one of the projects that we had last month that we were hopeful that would be here tonight, but obviously that isn't going to happen. We've got a bunch of discussion going on in relates to traffic impact of that project. So that one at the earliest will likely be at the next month's meeting. Next month's meeting will be busy. We have on the docket, there will be 2 rezonings. One is taking property with a bunch of houses on it that's zoned B3 to R1A. And the other one is taking one with a house on it, single family home just north of the river, and put it into the B4 district so that they can potentially operate a business out of it. Similar, they're B4 across the street from them is B4, the Patterson House, for example. So that one will be there. We also have our first telecommunications tower conditional use permit. I've been here almost 15 years. And we had one that was in process when I started here. So this will be the first one that I've handled myself. So that one will be on the docket as well. And I will also anticipate a couple of very small subdivisions, busting a 12-acre lot into 3 4-acre lots, that kind of stuff. But we're making progress on that. Eagle Ridge up on top of the hill is getting their final pavement, depending on weather, obviously, this week. Diamond Creek is redoing a couple of curbs in their area. They're going to do some pavement changes because after the first rain, the install was not perfect, and there were puddles that created on that couldn't drain. So they're fixing that. The Board of Aldermen approved their final plat at the last meeting because it was 100% in compliance with what you guys approved 1.5 years, 2 years ago. So I would anticipate that subdivision will be opening for lots, sales, and houses soon. They still have bonds to submit, and et cetera. But they've completed 98% of the work. They've got some offsite improvements that we're going to ask that they bond to extend because some of the stuff is just not in a position from. I mean, this is a push from the Public Works Department. We need to do something else first before you guys, and that's mill and overlay the rest of 6th Street. So we're going to try and get something else fixed ahead of that. But that will be probably sometime next summer that that work will finish, but it'll be bonded. Close to 50 building permits already. I think we're at 47, 48, something like that, for single family. That's almost what we had last year, I think, by the end of the year. So we're moving ahead. I think that's it. We still have the commercial stuff about ready to finish. And once that finishes and comes online, it's some of it's going to significantly improve our property tax scenario. South end of town, lastly, you'll see dirt work. You may have seen equipment at Full Features area. That's been going on down there for some time, and they had to bore the 200 and however many feet under the highway to put a bigger water line over to get fire flow for their project. That's complete, and they are now putting the foundation in. So that building will start going in the next couple of weeks. That's all I've got unless you have questions.
I do have a question, not about any of that, but the convenience store here north of town and that creek that runs along there, or is the city involved with any of that
Yes,
work that
100%.
they're doing to try to correct that?
Yes, and they ultimately had a scenario where a concrete truck drove over that without any stabilization on the top, and it caused that truck to fall into the creek and destroyed the wall or part of the wall. What our activities were from our department were we required them to get a separate engineer to come in and evaluate the wall as it sat. Whether the whole thing had to come down or what wasn't, it was ultimately that engineer had to stamp something saying it's safe or it's not, and give us a corrective action plan for a contractor to come in and do it. And that process apparently it's in fits and starts. I'm not certain what the scenario is because all the product should be there. It just those blocks fell. So we're monitoring that. We've already decided internally and in discussion with the fire district, we're not going to issue a final until such time as that wall's rebuilt. It's just too close to, the truck already fell off. So they do have a cap that will be put in place. So once they get all that done, then they'll be able to drive all the way around it like the original design. So yeah, that's there. Thank you for asking a question. It gave me an in to also highlight that today, Commissioner Dotson and I went to a affordable housing training put on by the Mid-America Regional Council. Our inspectors that do our commercial inspection, IBTS, et cetera, that discussed options and kind of a training for commissioners. I had sent you all a notice on it. And I would give the floor for Deb to briefly discuss what she thought of it. And if you don't want to mention or don't want to speak, Deb, I'll go through it real quick.
Well, I'll defer to you on some of it, but I would have to say that I learned more in the truck driving with Jack than I did at the seminar. But I actually did get some tidbits of information at the seminar that I picked up on. I didn't come away feeling like I had learned too much about how to solve the affordable housing issue. Yeah, everything's expensive everywhere. It's supply and demand. I did pick up on some interesting perspectives from surrounding commissioners, Excelsior Springs. There was, I don't remember his name now, but he was a commissioner of some sort from Kansas City.
Yes.
And he had a lot of insights as to what was happening in Kansas City, especially in the Northland. And we discussed the fear factor of Kansas City coming in and surrounding Smithville. As they were saying, Kansas City's been in our doorstep forever. So that's kind of a wash as to what they were talking about. But it was good in a lot of ways. And in other ways, it was
Frustrating.
Yes. Yours.
Yes. That would be my explanation of Deb's experience. It was frustrating because they don't have answers. What they did was really give us questions to start thinking about and talking about. So, and to clarify, this is not the old timey affordable housing that we were necessarily discussing. This was more along workforce housing. Affordable meaning something where somebody in the middle class can afford to buy a new versus where we're at right now.
I think somebody mentioned 300,000.
Yeah. to try and get them below that. Right now, just so you know, the average cost of a new home construction is $250 a foot. And you can do the math, what that means for a 2,000 square foot house. So that's all I have. If you have any other questions, I'll certainly try.
Jack, I have a question regarding tying in affordable housing and the new home permits that have been pulled. Do we know at the time of a permit being pulled what the estimated sales price might be?
No, we don't have a way to collect that. We do collect the price data as associated with what the assessor requires, and it's just the material costs associated with it. We usually get a pretty good idea if it's in a bigger project area, but we have lots of individual homes, spec homes.
Because like Ronnie's don't sell, right? He rents them. So we know what the cost is, but
And the large lot subdivision northeast or northwest there,
Lakeside Crossing.
Landmark
Landmark
Farms. I always
Farms.
say lake. It's Landmark Farms. Those are, 7, 8, 9, 10 acre lots.
Yeah.
They've been bought and they're people building houses, but they're not going up for sale. It's people bought them or a builder bought them to build the house for someone. So
Similar to the ranch too. I think there's one lot left.
yeah, that lot went.
One thing that they pushed was density. They had I guess for better, a practice session where we reviewed, as we would as commissioners, a submittal. And it looked very much like what Eric Craig's already got going over there by the high school with some changes. The original one we looked at, and we talked about the fact that ingress egress wasn't exactly great. It's for fire and police and things like that. So there were some changes made. This was a real world thing. Is it North Carolina? Something like
Yeah,
that.
it was somewhere in North Carolina.
And so the finished product was something that I thought I would be delighted to see this in our area. Because it tied in with what we talked about at one of the breakout sessions, cluster housing around a central courtyard type thing, quality of life issues, stuff like that. But the density wasn't enough, so wherever it was, it didn't pass.
Density was too much.
Well, the first one was too much, the second one was not enough.
Yeah.
So did they have any plans on to do build? Are they talking about just townhouses, or what are they going to do to get pricing under 300,000?
Well, to be quite frank, I don't know that there is. It's a square foot cost.
Yeah. If
You can build a little 1,000 square foot house and it's still going to cost you $250,000.
Yeah. They didn't have any solutions.
They really
No.
didn't. They really didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
They had good
Um,
potato chips and cookies.
Yeah. There was I think the duplexes are trading around 330 to 350 right now by the high school.
Well, some of them are higher than that.
380, almost 380.
Or what's the average cost of Smithville?
Yeah. Per side.
I don't maintain that data. That'd be more of a real estate agent scenario. But I would imagine the average data, we're real close, including all homes. Are you just talking new homes?
No, all homes.
Yeah, I would say we're probably in the 280 range.
For average.
Average, including a house downtown that's 100 years old.
That's
You know.
probably about where we're at.
Yeah. New houses, and I don't know that there's
Yeah.
anything below 300 of any type.
Yeah. There's stuff selling in Hills of Shannon off market over 3.
Okay, any other questions? If not, we'll move on to item number 4, public hearing. No, Brandy, do we have anybody for public hearing?
The
No.
applicant is Ashley Smith that's on there. That's the only,
Yeah.
so
Open it and close it.
there's Ashley there.
So I guess do I open it and
Yeah,
read
well,
this?
Yep,
Yeah,
open
yeah.
it just like normal and then give her the opportunity to speak.
Okay.
If you want me to give you a lead in, I'll certainly do that as well.
Okay, then we'll open up to public hearing for the single phase final plat, McBee's Coffee and Car Wash, 2 lots. This is a public hearing on a single phase, final phase plat of McBee's Coffee and Car Wash, 2 lots. If any members of the public that wish to speak for or against the item, please identify yourself, give your name and address for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak. I'll first call on staff to present an overview of the proposal.
You have before you the recordable document. At last meeting, you will recall we had a conceptual plan that was submitted. The purpose of the conceptual plan was to adjust primarily the lot sizes. We have a lot size requirement in B3 of 3 acres. Unless you have a conceptual plan that allows it to lay out. You may recall in that conceptual plan process as well that there was in 2 lots for the north one with the McBee's site on it, or the building site on it, and it showed on the extreme east side of that a driveway coming in off of Richardson. On this plat document before you, you'll see it's got a shared access drive that goes all the way to lot 2. In the development agreement, you'll also see a proposal that when lot 2 eventually develops, they too, if they are able to get a separate access easement or access point off of 169 from MoDOT, that they will have to create a pathway of shared access so that both lots can get through. We also have the staff report's pretty self-explanatory on it. With the development agreement approved, staff's recommendation on this is as shown in the staff report. The plat meets all of the standards. That's all I have.
Okay. Would Ashley like to speak?
Yes, I would. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, my name is Ashley Smith. I'm the applicant and pre-construction project manager for McBee's Coffee and Car Wash. Thank you for letting me speak and having me via video tonight. I did want to discuss the developer's agreement that was given to me last week. I do want to say we agree to all the items. I did want to say, except for the traffic portion for the intersection. So from the beginning, Jack has been extremely helpful. His follow through is great. He has, from the beginning, told us and gave us forewarning that yes, we, are going to be contributing to the traffic light. It was told about $10,000 to $20,000 an estimate, rough estimate from the very beginning. So we have, we're not against contributing to the traffic light, nor are we against it going in. But it's a little bit of an issue as the amount. During the pre-app process, we had hired a traffic engineer to do an evaluation as far as our percentage of traffic for the entire lot 1 and 2 that will actually be, using the light. So, and I believe, I'm not sure if Jack has provided the traffic letter to you that was stamped by the engineer, but if you are following with that, basically on the last page, it gets to the fact that McBee's and then the other lot, which is possibly a restaurant, it's unsure, that was not submitted with this. But if it were a high traffic area in the future, we were looking at for both lots for the full subdivision of 8.3%. The traffic light portion is estimated to cost about $400,000, which Jack had been working with MoDOT to get that estimate. So with the traffic letter, we understood once that had come, we were looking more instead of 10 to 20,000, about 35,000 for that 8% of 400,000. So with the developer's agreement that I received last week, the city did ask for 100,000 or 25% of that $400,000 cost. So I'm not sure of the city's budget. I know that the whole process had basically been that the city was asking for 25% from each corner. and that traffic evaluations had been done for other parts of the intersection. So I'm not sure if numbers need to be reevaluated for other neighbors. I know Jack had mentioned there possibly was something else in the works for another neighbor right now that was being negotiated, which he's not completely part of. So I'm not sure how to resolve where the money needs to come from, but the McBees aren't super happy. They weren't really wanting to do the $100,000 ask. So if we did the 8.5, it'd be 35, but we are willing to, meet you in the middle. As far as even if it was 10%, we're looking at 40,000, or even 15% is 60,000. So I wanted to bring this up and then open up the discussion to see, your thoughts, what you're comfortable with, or any comments you may have. So thank you.
And if I may, Madam Chairman, as it relates to that, I think her comments are perfect for public hearing. I think the discussion back and forth should occur at the next item on the agenda, which is the actual discussion points. So.
Okay. Seeing no more members of the public left to speak, I will call the hearing closed.
There we go.
Move on to item number 5, McBee's Coffee and Car Wash final plat, 2 lots. I have a first and a second and we'll discuss it.
Motion to approve McBee's Coffee and Car Wash final plat, 2 lots.
I got Rob. Or I'm sorry, Billy.
He shows up in person more, I think. I think he brings her cookies or something. I don't know.
Okay, open it up for discussion.
I think Ashley brought up some points that I think we need to discuss with you all so that you can understand where we're at. The percentage of traffic versus the amount requested was more based upon, the dollar amounts that came forward that she had identified did come early on from GBA, which was their traffic analysis firm. And what we did in this one, since we just completed a full intersection analysis on the stuff across the street for Richardson Street Plaza, we asked them to take all that data and throw their data into it so that we would have a better understanding of where things were. And as you may recall, the development agreement for that project was 100,000 on it. That's how this number was reached. So GBA presented we think it's worth it's going to cost about this amount, and our percentage of traffic is X. In both scenarios, we asked them to reevaluate a little bit because of a right-in, right-out proposal that would likely happen on Lot 2 in the future, which would drive more traffic through the intersection. It was a pittance of change on the total number of percentage. The property across the street and north, the Richardson Street Plaza had about 7% of all the traffic in the intersection. This project, as she had indicated, was about 7 point something, and now it's 8.3 with this slight adjustment. So for our purposes, they're wash. They're the same. We did not evaluate from the perspective of when we reached that number with the first folks, we did not evaluate it from the perspective of how much is going into the intersection, primarily because 90% or 80, the vast majority of the traffic drives right by there every day. We've got 18,000 cars a day going north and south. The bigger concern is the traffic coming from the east and the west into it, because that's what's going to trigger the light. And the people turning at that light to go either to the west or to the east, if they're headed north or south, was the bigger issue. We've tried to work with MoDOT on this. They've indicated that the more input we can get from the surrounding neighbors, and they are discussing themselves putting their money, some of their money in on this as well. ultimately that's how we reached this number. I don't know that the city ever said it's going to be 10, 20, 30, or 40, because we really wanted to know what their traffic was going to be as it related to the across the street. And when we got that number, it was late in the game, as she said, last week. We got them, here's what the development agreement is. Everything else, we had been clear in agreement early on. They had to move a water line to make it work. They had to extend sewers to make it work. And those are no issues. It's just this traffic impact is the only real issue that's out there. And FYI, this development agreement is the same development agreement we used with Richardson Street Plaza folks. Other than tweaking instead of the northeast corner or northwest corner of the intersection, it's the southeast, and adjusted the language to focus it on this project. And ultimately, as you'll see in the agreement, lastly, we've identified McBee's companies, which is the folks that are trying to buy the north lot. And the other LLC is the current owner of the land. It's a restaurant owner here in town. So I don't know who they would propose to do it, but at the end of the day, the good thing that Ashley was upfront with and real quick with was, here's what traffic is going to be with a car wash. So they've been real clear on that, but I just wanted to highlight that this is basically the same agreement that we have on the other direction. So if you have any other questions of me about this.
So this is a little bit of a follow-up from my question from last month regarding who pays for this. For argument's sake, McBee's pays 10 and the other project across the street pays a similar amount. Do we go to the Artistry in Motions, the NRADs, we can ask for anything we want, but there's no reason for them to say, yes, take our money. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, and there's no method for us to do it. I will say that we have had conversations with the library district, and they are willing to contribute. We haven't got to a point of, it's another governmental entity, so their budget's going to be a scenario where we're at as well. That negotiation is pending, so
Yeah.
we haven't gotten involved.
So like when Cadence developed their property, we didn't go to Hildebrand and the nursing home and the hospital and ask. It's the development that's impacting the intersection.
So then, for argument's sake, we can come up with 40% from new developments coming in that are going to help pay for this. Where does the 60% come from?
Let's assume, assuming it's 40 or 50 or whatever that number is, some of it will likely come from MoDOT. And some of it, depending on how it lays out and where we go with MoDOT on this agreement, will hopefully be through some federal grant funding. One of the things that expedites these lights to get installed sooner is when cities come forward with, hey, can we get a 30% match, and you guys, and MoDOT, you build it and bid it and everything else. For example, we had a proposal up north that ultimately would have required turn lanes at 188th Street. That traffic study brought forth that there were some existing obligations of MoDOT, similar to what this one does. And it's in part because MoDOT changed the game. It used to be a 2,600 feet gap between lights. That's why the library said we should do it. And MoDOT refused it, said, no, we don't want a light there. When the property on the northwest corner came in end of last year, we required them to do the study, but my assumption going in was MoDOT was going to say no again. And they said, no, it meets the warrants. This intersection should be 1,300 feet. That's fine. So they changed the game on it, or this light would have been installed by the library 11 years ago. at that point, it was their traffic throwing this stuff over. But not on all warrants. There are numerous traffic warrants that MoDOT works for, AM peak, PM peak, regular, all kinds of those warrants. And this one had 2 of 8 warrants as it sits before anybody adds. So
Does the city have any money in the budget for this? Is this?
no, because we are where we are. That's the scenario. We've got to get, now that we have the potential of having funding from both of these developments, that's now we've got X amount, and we'll see where that goes.
So you mentioned maybe grants from MoDOT or whatever. You have no idea what % of money that would be or anything, what the average grant would be on.
No
something of
idea.
this.
No idea. And in part, keeping in mind, MoDOT understands they have some obligation here because it's already in place. Up north, that intersection improvement, MoDOT's doing 100% of it. So, but that happened because the other project that triggered it, that showed that, hey, you've got some warrants met, ended up not going forward. So MoDOT's going to build that intersection, hopefully, and bid it in fall, and next spring it goes in. So, but that's the same scenario.
So what's the staff recommendation for this?
As I indicate in the staff report, we would recommend that these folks pay what the other folks are going to have to pay when they get done. This development, not necessarily this, we got 2 lots here. They're going to have 2 businesses. How that works out, I don't know, but we would recommend that we be consistent, especially since the traffic's the same.
The other, say the restaurant goes in, the agreement would be the same where they would be asked to pay $100,000 as well. Is that it?
No, because this is we have a subdivision. And that's when you go through the traffic stuff. What they would have to do, let's say it comes in 2 years, their obligation will be to do their own traffic study. It'll be a full study. It won't be like McBee's had to just supplement the study that happened just recently. They'll have to do their own complete study of what they're proposing and how that impacts the entire intersection. We would also require that that they do a shared access so that people can come off of Richardson into whatever's on lot 2, and anybody getting on lot 2, if there's an access off of there, can go out through McBee's lot as well. So whatever, if MoDOT requires a turn lane on their side through their traffic study, when that happens, they'd have to construct that on their own. It's similar to any other traffic when we have a turn lane for a residential subdivision, for example. It's likely going to benefit a lot of folks around them, but we only require that developer that's doing that project to pay. Hence the roundabout, for example, at Harborview.
So I got a question. You just said, that they kind of, we kind of gave them a study and they just had to supplement that. So if they didn't have that, they would have to do a full-blown traffic study on their own.
Yes. But from our perspective, we already had one. So yeah, they would have had to do a study. It would have cost a little bit more, but it wouldn't have been a massive amount.
Okay. But I mean, they are getting some sort of assistance just from that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
I mean, this is an evaluation letter. They didn't have to pull the data because the data was already assembled. The evaluation for the intersection had already done. All they were doing was their engineers were throwing in additional data. And what that does to the intersection, it didn't really make any significant design changes or anything. It's the warrants are met. So it needs to go in, and
What would the cost be if they did that by themselves? Like this next guy probably will have to.
well, did the light?
No,
What?
nothing like just a study.
Traffic study.
Oh, off the top of my head, I would say it's 8,000 to 15,000, depending on what kind of data they can get without having to do their own traffic counts.
So in essence, the brunt of the cost of this light doesn't fall on existing residents or occupants or future ones. It's solely on this business and the other proposed business, which we have 2 of right now, correct?
Well,
So,
it wouldn't be the business necessarily. We're talking about the lots in the subdivision. In this case, it's a little different because this subdivision is for a business. So
Right.
yes. The
right,
other one has potential of 4 buildings on 3 lots. This one is 2 buildings on 2 lots.
but in the meantime, we're gonna be waiting until we collect enough money to put a light in.
Well, no, I don't. I would say what MoDOT's position last year was, once you have some funds available, come back and we can start the conversation
Okay,
about when this can happen. And we don't have any funds from the other one because the trigger is it's a final plat. When you record your plat and you're able
Right.
to start moving, that's when it occurs. So that'll be a similar scenario to this. Water line's got to install. Sewer line's got to install and be inspected and improved. And then they can record the plat unless they want to bond all that, but most people don't.
So I guess from my perspective, if we already have precedent where, we have someone across the street that is already paying this, this agreement. I feel like we need to stay consistent, as a city and, continue that. And if there are some potentials for some reimbursements down the road, if we get unexpected cash from MoDOT extra than what we anticipate, maybe we can talk at that point. But from an agreement perspective, I think that we need to be consistent.
And just so you're all aware, as it relates to the authority aspects of this, you're a recommending body, obviously, so you can make a recommendation one way or the other. However, ultimately, final decision on the Board of Aldermen at their meeting next week. However, if you think that's the recommendation, that's ultimately it's a recommendation. If you want to reduce the amount, that's a recommendation. However you want to do it. Like I said, staff's got a recommendation for approval based upon compliance with the development agreement as it is. You guys go from there, ultimately making a recommendation to the board as it relates to it.
Okay, thank you.
so my only opinion is that I feel like they've come back with a healthy counter offer. They didn't come back and say, no, you said 35, we're sticking with 35, or we may go up to 40. So I think that's a consideration that they did come back with a reasonable counter offer.
All right, thinking off the top of my head is, I liked what John had to say regarding keeping it consistent.
Can you move your speaker a little, microphone a little closer?
Yeah, okay. Equal consideration. But then when you're talking about, let me clarify here, across the street is 4 units.
Right. 7% of the traffic in those 4 buildings,
Okay, and then
8.3 in
then
these
it's
2.
2 on the other side.
Yeah.
It does seem like there is some room for some wiggle room there. If you got 4 over here that's doing 100 and you got 2 over here. Maybe there
To be
is
quite
some room.
frank, Ms. Dotson, that's why we wanted the traffic study updated.
Yeah,
Because the more important thing to us is not, you could have 700 buildings over there. If the traffic over there is 1% with 700 buildings versus,
right.
so to the extent that they're nearly identical is how we got to if it had been 3%, half of the impact of the other project, I think we would have probably been in a scenario where we were, okay, it's half the impact of what they're going to have to pay.
But we don't have, we've got equal impact then,
Yeah, from a
Okay.
traffic standpoint,
right?
I think one is 7.2% and the other one's 8.3.
And 8.3 is across the street.
No, 8.3 is this one.
Is
So
Vice versa.
85% of the traffic is going up and down 169, no matter what goes in or if anything goes in.
Yeah, yes, the vast majority of the traffic is north-south. This is to create the access point.
Right. So it's MoDOT traffic.
For all intents and purposes.
Okay.
Yes.
Hmm.
I would suspect when Richardson on the west side went in the early 90s, that if there was a traffic study done, there wasn't even close to a light. Like I said, the library did one in 2009. And they said it looks like traffic lights warranted, and MoDOT said no because they wanted this big distance. If you recall as well, 2009 was shortly after the approval of the new light that was going to go in at Hospital Drive that happened to go in 10 years later. So.
And you have to look at when Richardson was first put in, we were, what, a population maybe 4,000.
Well, the other aspect of
And
it, the
two-lane
highway was,
road.
highway was
Right.
2 lanes.
So a lot has changed
Yeah.
since that intersection
Yes.
went into being. I'm of the, I agree with John. I mean, the other developer, that's what they agreed with, being consistent. I think that's what we really need to look at and probably move it forward and have Ashley come next week and speak to the Board of Aldermen and present this to them. Because as you indicated, they have the ultimate final say on this agreement.
And I would, notwithstanding whatever happens here tonight, it will go to the board with a thumbs up, thumbs down, or whatever. That would have been my conversation to Ashley, is prepare something and be ready to address it specifically to the board at that time. Makes it a lot.
Motion to approve it as is.
Second.
Clerk call roll.
Okay, I have one more question. It's not about the traffic study. Just a resident asked me over the past couple of weeks, is there going to be any water recycling with this project? Not head
That would
nod.
be, Ashley, I don't know. It's an operational issue.
Yes, we recycle most of the water. I don't have the exact percentage. That would be more on the construction team, but I want to say it's anywhere from 70 to 80%. We're trying to recycle as much as possible. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Clerk call roll.
Okay, Mayor Boley,
Yes.
Dennis,
Nay.
Deb,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Billy,
Yes.
Melissa,
Yes.
Alderman Chevalier.
Aye.
6-1.
This will go to the Board of Aldermen 1 week from tonight at the same time, 7 PM. The agenda will go out and Ashley you'll get the Zoom meeting invite, or you can come in person as well. So, and it will be up in addition to the second reading of the conceptual plan. That's the other aspect of this. We do these in separate scenarios like this, best case scenario, because this would be approved by a resolution of the board, which is 1 vote. And ordinances require 2 votes. So we did the first reading last meeting. The second reading of that conceptual plan will be on the agenda to read. And then following that, assuming it passes, this will go. Because if that didn't pass, this couldn't happen. Because you can't have a subdivision of these size lots in B3 without the conceptual plan.
Do I have a motion to adjourn? Second.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 We're adjourned.